technicality that shows up in an academic conference. So you typically read a paper, because the argument is too dense to kind of give it extemporaneously. And for better or for worse, good theology, as one of my dear friends, Father Catchton Cuddy, is a Dominican priest. He's like, look, there's no truth about God that shouldn't move you. There's no truth about God that shouldn't move you. The theology really should shape and form not just the head, but the head and the heart. And it's, cliche to say, but in the academy, especially when you're just tied in, with minutia and abstruse things, arcane things, and it can be easy to get caught up into those details and maybe miss the whole point of why you went into theology in the first place. Yeah. And so I think doing the public lectures, I think it's good to have a hand in both, because you come back to the people, you realize, this is why I got into this, and I want to give you academic solid teaching. But theology is also about conversion. It's about God, who God is, and what he's doing. It's not about my own ego, CV, publications. And I mean, I wish it weren't the case, but academics are not immune to this. And I felt these pressures more at other times in my life, because especially when you're early on, like you're trying to establish yourself. You want to, just like, but any other career has this, right?
Yeah, and then do you have like mentors or something who would kind of help you along with this and say, here's how not to let ego get in the way. Here is the way to kind of keep Christ central.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'm pretty blessed at Benedictine. There's, I think, 10 of us in theology. These are great friends. And then there's about 7 or 8 in philosophy. And so there's a lot of feedback back and forth. And I will even say, and this probably is just my own perspective, but things seem to have even changed since I've been there so long. I'm about to start my 15th year. When you first come, at least when I first came, you're insecure, and you feel like there's a lot of one-upping, like, what have you read? What have you published? What have et cetera, et cetera. What language do you know? But then after everybody gets settled in, and again, I think I was probably imposing this on my experience there, because I was the new guy. And everybody kind of knows, look, we all do what we do really well. We're supporting each other. There's no need to compete. And then you have some of your more veteran colleagues say, look, just do what you can, do what you need to do. But keep first things first. I mean, your wife, your kids, your family, and even your students, right? I mean, remember why you went into this in the first place.
Yeah, do you think, it makes sense. You would lose a lot if you would just kind of busy yourself in books, get another doctorate, give academic papers, and then not actually break it down to people who are trying to walk the walk. Yeah.
Well, and I mean, this is my experience.
Not to diminish that work.
No, absolutely. But it's easier in a sense to sit in a graduate seminar where you can assume a whole bunch of lingo than to go teach some beginners. Like, it takes the master.
That's what Lewis is, right? I was just reading Lewis the other day.
You look at these great, I mean, it takes the master to be able to unpack this for someone who isn't assuming a whole set of jargon and the like. And for me, my scholarship has really things that have grown up out of, especially since the dissertation, out of my classroom experience. I mean, so it's hard for me to get too excited about something that doesn't have at least some payoff for my students or some payoff in the public square for conversion. There's people doing great work, but I've resisted the kind of rabbit trail approach. And for me, getting into Wojtyła's life has been hugely influential in that Wojtyła, JPII, first-rate academic, but clearly subordinated his entire academic enterprise to the promulgation of the gospel. And I've tried to use that as kind of a model for me.
Yeah, and you said you were teaching your students like the life of Wojtyła, and said that they were, through that, appreciating his theology, philosophy.
So it's one of the talks that I'm giving here at the Defending the Faith conference. So here we are in Steubenville, Ohio, with so good to be with you all and so many other people. About 5 years ago or so, I started teaching a class on JPII, and I always loved JPII, always admired him from afar, but really dove into his bio. And what I found with students, and I've done this a couple times at Benedictine, and we have a study abroad program in Florence, Italy, and spring of 2018, I taught on JPII in Florence. And so there we were with 48 of our students from Benedictine, my whole family. So I had 4 kids at the time. I mean, every meal.
What a gift.
Oh my gosh. It formed them, but it also formed us, formed me. And what I found over and over again with this generation with JPII is they think highly of him because their mentors spoke highly of him, but they don't know the man. They don't know the human story. And when you dive into the human story, ideas like TOB, or even like a book, Love and Responsibility, which I usually read with them, when they read that on the heels of his ministry to college students, they're like, whoa, this isn't just ideas. This is a dude who went kayaking, who went camping, who hung out with them. They could ask him anything. And this is the fruit of that. And so the group of young people, beginning of when JPII was first stationed in Krakow was at St. Florian's in 1949. This was the beginning of his kind of college outreach. He's a young, he's 29 years old, right? So he was born in 1920. And this group that emerges, and we're in the heart of communism in Poland, right? I mean, and communism, it's been a great way to teach them about communism because it's not just an economic system. This was a systematic promulgation of atheism. This was a redefinition of sexuality, the family. This was a redefinition of the past, the present, and an attempt to be the arbiter of the future. And he took these students where they really couldn't trust anybody. They couldn't trust their peers, who's an informer. And they finally, for the first time, could enter into real Christian and Catholic fellowship and friendship and actually acknowledge their faith. And he had to take them out, and he formed this community, and they called themselves eventually Środowisko, which means environment, or he liked milieu. And it was sort of like a zone of freedom in the midst of communist Poland where they could really enter this kind of deep friendship. And these people, he saw them get married, saw them have kids, got to know their kids. I mean, he got to know their grandkids. And so this became, so from 53 to 78 until he became Pope, they went every year on a 2-week kayaking trip in August. And so when I presented this to our students, in fact, we were coming back from Subiaco, and I said, and they're about to have a reading on Środowisko in this kind of communist situation. I said, I want you to look for this word Środowisko. And my prayer is that this time in Florence will be our Środowisko. And they just latched onto it. They even made T-shirts by the end. Like, it's a long story, but we actually are renting a house to college students, and this started after we came back. This is part of the move, and they call it the Środowisko House because it's nice. The whole purpose is an apostolate to build up Catholic culture off campus, right? To have a place to go where you can have fun, the joy of the gospel, but we gather. I mean, what virtuous friendship is, it's not just running at each other. It's about something. It's moving toward a goal. Absolutely.
With someone towards something.
Exactly. Precisely. And they had and these are great students, but that semester, man, there was conversions happening, conversions deepening. It was like, who wants to go all in? Who wants to be a Jedi for Jesus? Who wants to? I mean, like in Benedict, we got great students, but it's, things are different than back in the day, and it's like it's easier to kind of do a little bit of the poser thing. Maybe you say a rosary, maybe you go to mass a couple times a week.
Sure.
But the human formation might be lacking with chastity and drunkenness, and I don't mean just a fall. I mean kind of like, not seeing it as a problem. And so we had a lot of students who was like, I want to go all in, and then it gets exciting.
That's so cool, isn't it? Yeah, do you have many students like that who come into your theology you teach, right? Mm-hmm. Theology class, scripture class, and you can tell they're not really buying this stuff? Is anyone kind of antagonistic towards the faith, or is it more just a sort of apathy?
So, I mean, so Benedict, and we're actually, when as a student, we have, especially with athletics. I mean, if I get a student from New Jersey or Oregon, or we have students from 49 states, so I think everything but Maine right now, they're either there to play football or for the faith, right? So there's definitely a room to evangelize and to be kind of in the world, not of the world, even though we have a number of just incredible, amazing students. So that definitely happens. And there's also maybe another category where you have students who maybe had a conversion, maybe they went to a student book conference in high school, maybe they're even there to do theology or evangelization, but the culture is seeping in everywhere, right? So occasionally, even those students will have struggles and negative influences and the like, and I think. This is where Wojtyła has been so big for me but this is kind of related to the kind of academic minutia question, especially for those students, and really I think it's true for all of us. If you get in too far into the weeds and the minutia, and you can't answer those, so what's the point question? Like, what's the upshot? What does this matter? When you can't answer that, it's like it sterilizes what's happening. Whereas Wojtyła is kind of an anchor. Like they see the point, and they're willing to read hard things. I mean, Love and Responsibility is not an easy text. No. I mean, Witness to Hope, not an easy text. Like they plow through those things because they see that this matters. And so, I mean, sometimes they get pushed back, sometimes this and that. It depends on the class. But I think harnessing why we're doing theology helps a lot, if that makes sense or not. Because if they can't see the point, they can't see the upshot, it's hard for all of us to be motivated.
If you like that clip, be sure to like and subscribe. Cheers.